Hey, Mike.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I am just so excited. It is a beautiful day of rain in the mid Atlantic states, and it's been raining for days. And but you know what? There's comic books out there. There's good stuff. We're going to talk about
Yeah,
some good stuff.
yeah. It doesn't have to remind us of the 2 years of COVID.
Ah, listen, I want to say right now to everybody out there, I apologize if I'm a little on edge. We have a wedding happening in the family this weekend. My son is getting
Oh,
married,
sure.
so I'm very excited and also super stressed. So we are going to talk about some really cool things tonight. We're going to talk about what's going on in the world. We're going to have a bunch of guests. We're going to have Mark Fishman's going to join us early. We're going to talk about what's going on with Unshaven Comics. And then we have two guests a little bit later. We're going to bring in. We have Amit Tishler and Elliot Sperl, and they're going to talk about their new book, The Last Wardens from Mad Cave. So I'm very excited for that, and I'm sure we'll get into a bunch of other cool stuff. What's good with you, Mike?
What's good with me? Not a lot. This hasn't been a great couple of days for me, but so far I'm surviving, so I'm okay.
Have you watched Doctor Who?
Yes, I did. I
I
watched both
love
of
your
them.
opinion. Now you are much more of a Doctor Who expert than I am, but I would love your opinion on what you're thinking so far.
I have been watching Doctor Who since he first arrived here in the
Yes.
States. Um, that was due to my friend and then partner at the Chicago Comic Con, Larry Sherritt, who wound up becoming like one of the major Doctor Who merchandisers in America. He was way ahead of the curve. We put on a couple of Doctor Who conventions as part of the Chicago Comic Con. So I go back a long ways with the character, and I have known some of the members of the cast, and I have to tell you, I have never disliked a single actor who played the lead role ever. I have disliked a great many of the scripts that he had to perform because they were
Mhm.
dull, boring, and stupid. But that's maybe 25%. Um, the shows that we saw in the last couple of years were not as bad as the worst of the original run, but were not as good as the early part of this run. So I was a little disappointed up until this week. These two
Okay.
shows bring back the spirit, the certainly the energy of the show. And the show has a unique energy. It's very much, to quote Larry, it's as close to a real comic book as you can get. And I think that that's true. I think that that's very true. The writing is superlative. The acting, everybody is just so damn well cast. And of course, being British, they're brilliant actors because they've managed for decades to convince us that the Romans spoke in a British accent. So something in their schooling or something. So yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of it, and I'm looking forward to this Fridays.
All right. Very good. Very good. I'm glad to hear that. Um, there was a announcement today from Mad Cave. Now, Mad Cave is just constantly inundating us with good stuff. Did you see the announcement from Mad Cave today?
No, I have not.
There's a new book coming out. So there's an exclusive on the beat, and I'll share it here. Um,
Yeah, one of those
so
books.
yeah, we'll get them. We'll get them in there. Here we go. So the beat has an exclusive. Mad Cave announces a new crime series called Kosher Mafia.
Oh,
David Hassan and Sammy Cavella. I am.
it sounds like a Joe Kubert graphic novel
Well,
from about 10 years ago.
there was such a thing. This is based. It's coming out in August, I believe, and it is based in the Cleveland Jewish Mafia.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it is a love letter to the Cleveland Jewish Mafia. Um,
Not sure I would go that far.
well, um, I it looks very interesting. August 7th is the release date, but it's got some
so
good
it's
covers.
August.
There you go.
Is Elliot Ness in it?
I'm not sure. Here's the thing. This is what the writer says. This comic is about anti-Semitism, specifically that it neither started nor ended with the Holocaust. When I took the idea to Mad Cave, they didn't just take a chance on the book. They threw their support behind it, full-throated, and that kind of kicked off with reaching out to Sammy. I hope what we've created provides not only a feast for your eyes, but also for the soul, and to that, eyes gesund. So, I thought that was an interesting piece of news.
Yeah, that is interesting. The editor in me says I would have put a space in that logo, but I'm looking forward to it. I know a lot about the Jewish mob in Cleveland.
Sure.
Because I know a lot about mob history because I've been hanging out with George Hagenauer for like 60 years.
Sure.
So George and I have gone through all of this, and George knows more about this than any other living human being.
So the other piece of let's put it this way. So you sent me a text that was a link to an article on Bleeding Cool last week, and I laughed hysterically at it. But apparently, and I find this to be interesting news, that Volkswagen is suing DC to prevent them from trademarking the term Blue Beetle.
Right. Certainly for use in cars. Now, Apple has decided not to make cars. Maybe Discovery will make that same decision. Just pulled the rug out from under you, didn't I?
I mean, I don't. I looked at it and I'm like, this is the type of litigation that just makes me smile and frustrates me.
Let me tell you a secret. You can read the laws and the regulations of the Patent Office. The Trademark Bureau is part of that. Trademark,
right.
Copyright, fall under patent. You can read those regulations as if you don't defend your mark, you can lose it.
Yes.
So
you can read it that way.
Oh, you can read it that way. So it's quite possible that our good friends over in Germany are just doing what they have to do to hold on to their mark, or it could be that they're just stupid, thin-skinned pricks. Hard to tell.
I don't know that they have the mark. Like, it's weird. It's weird. It's a weird thing. It is
weird. They don't have a mark on Blue Beetle. They have a mark on Beetle.
But they didn't have a mark on Beetle until much later after Beetle existed and Blue Beetle existed. And yeah. All right.
But the Beetle, the Volkswagen Beetle, did exist, or at least was designed before the Blue Beetle. I could point that out.
Yes.
And it was designed by Adolf Hitler. So, if we can't respect his rights.
I understand. All right. It's been an interesting week. It's an interesting week in pop culture. I will say that. It's an interesting week in pop culture. We're going to bring in our first guest tonight. We have the dashing Mark Fishman, who's going to wow us with infinite information about what's going on in the world of the Unshaven Comics guys. Hello, sir.
Hello. Yeah, I don't know where he thinks I'm dashing to. I'm just here.
You got to be dashing now.
Yeah, that's all right. I can take that name.
My Fair Lady. Did you ever see My Fair Lady?
A long time ago, yes.
Yeah, me too. It was really a stupid and a horrible movie, and full of all kinds of just horrible right-wing values that piss me off.
I think
so be dashing.
We all watched it. I think there was a time when we thought it might have been the one of the musicals when I was in junior high, but instead they went with Fiddler on the Roof, so I was happy.
It's a much better musical.
Yes.
I never saw Fiddler on the Roof, although I'm a Zero Mostel fan. I never saw it because I wanted to die. I still do, being the only Jew in America who hasn't seen that.
Well,
I
that's a
paid.
noble
This is
pursuit.
the truth. I paid the band leader at my wedding to not play the song, no matter who requested it.
Yeah, I got no dog in that race. I was in the play, so I got to be Villager 2. Very important part.
Oh yeah.
I got to start the second act. I was a bagel salesman, really working against cast.
Well,
So it goes. I mean, you guys were talking about Jews. I figured I'd just start in.
Well,
with that.
it's a bit of what happens tonight. I don't know. I think we have a theme somewhere along the line, but
Well, I think Earth has a theme right now.
yeah. So look at this. Look at this licensing expo.
Yeah.
The Las Vegas Licensing Expo coming up next week. The Unshaven Comics will be at stand B117. What's going on?
Yeah, we're taking a dive. We decided enough was enough, and of all the Unshavens, it was Kyle that said, "Let's do this."
Well, he's the most shaven.
He is the most shaven, but he's also the biggest curmudgeon of the three of us.
True.
So, like, Matt and I went into this going, "There's no way Kyle's going to say yes to this, so we can just go plan on doing something else fun." And then he said, "We only live once. Let's go." So we're really excited to go to the show. We've been prepping now for what feels like months. And, I would say things are pretty promising. We have the entire first day booked solid minus half an hour for lunch. And then we have 6 meetings on the following day and 6 meetings on the last day.
Wow.
What do you guys hope to get out of it?
Our hope is that we can tell our story about the Samurnauts from a business perspective and expand Samurnauts into the places that Unshaven Comics just doesn't have the capacity to do. Ideally, a show, toy line, video game, all three. But we have a fallback position. We'll be okay if they put us on birthday plates, like for cake. Because at very least, we've all discussed it. We don't mind being the low-cost leader on the show floor. By day 3, we can just tell them, make Samurnaut party favors, birthday hats, whatever, underoos. We'll take it all.
I've had some weird experiences at that show, but not so much in Las Vegas, more so in New York, which makes sense. New York is weirder. That's where I met John Wayne's son. And I took him to the Che Guevara merchandising booth, which is a very surreal experience on so many levels.
Yeah. Well, we've seen, it's an interesting, yeah.
I'm sorry.
All the different people that are there.
I told you I'm on edge a little bit this week. And you just threw John Wayne's son, Che Guevara, and license. How does this?
Yes. Well, there are various booths throughout the convention, and more so in Las Vegas. And there was a booth in one part of the Javits Center in New York. This is, 10 years ago, that was merchandising Che Guevara's image on shirts and that sort of thing. Now, I was very receptive to that, not because of my politics, because they're not the same as El Che's, but because whenever I was summoned for jury duty, I would wear my Che Guevara T-shirt.
Well, that's
and they never selected. Never selected. Matter of fact, they wanted to get rid of me as fast.
I will use that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was really great. It worked like a charm.
I can
John
second
Wayne's,
your weirdness, though.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to second your weirdness, but I'll let you finish your story because afterwards I can tell you someone solicited us for a meeting that follows in a similarly weird pattern.
Oh, I can hardly wait. Just to finish the story, John Wayne's son was there appearing on behalf of the John Wayne licensing mega machine. He's at the show at least, he was a very nice guy, and that was his job. So, but he was really pleasant. I really enjoyed him. It was really kind of creepy, though, because he looked a lot like his father. He looked like his father wanted to look. So I was very impressed. And his booth was not that far from the Guevara booth. So for some reason in conversation, I said, "Have you seen that booth over there?" And he says, "No, is that?" And he goes, "Yeah, Che Guevara." And he says, "Yeah, they're merchandising Che Guevara." And I says, "Yeah, that's pretty much the communist way, isn't it?" And the conversation didn't last that much longer, but it was a good time. It was a very surreal time.
All right. So what,
Yeah, I don't know
how do we follow this, Mark?
Well, okay,
You're
so
up.
great. Yeah, so obviously, like we've been very proactive in making meeting requests. So I've been adamant once a day to go into the back end and filter and find people that sound like they'd be interested in working with us. But every now and again, we did get people that came to us for a meeting. Now, as I would go back and learn, like one of them is literally the people that run the show. So of course they're just checking in because we're first timers. They want to make sure we're doing well. But then one group out of nowhere solicited Matt, who has not been in the back end system, has no profile or anything. And Matt forwarded it to me because it was, "I don't know what this is. Can you fix it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I'm reading like the headline from them in the meeting request, and it says, "We hold licensing in comic book publishing in Mexico, and Brian Baumgartner, who played Kevin Malone in The Office."
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, those are two. They're separated by a colon. Okay, they're not the same thing. And I'm trying to figure out what exactly they're looking for. So I wrote them back before we accepted the meeting, and I said, "Well, we're coming to the show to talk about the Samurnauts, but I'm curious how you found us or what you're looking for." And they said, "Oh yeah, well, Brian played Kevin from The Office. We represent him, and he wants to make a comic book." So we're taking that meeting, if nothing else, just to hear what possibly that could be. So
those are the best meetings to take, because you don't walk away frustrated that you didn't sell something or accomplish anything. If you don't accomplish anything, you walk away going, "Wow, so that's what that was about. That's weird or great or horrible, but still interesting."
Weird, great, or horrible. We'll take all three. And so we come into the show knowing that, like, we have no, strong inclination that we're going to get anything like truly accomplished, so much as like we're there to learn. We're there to put the story out there and see what we'll get back in return. And hilariously, at my day job, it turns out one of my clients is going to be there. So my boss and I are trying to figure out, do I tell them ahead of time or just surprise them on the show floor as they walk past me and see if they recognize me?
Are you bringing a cream pie?
Hadn't thought. Well, I don't think you can fly with it, but we are stopping at Walmart ahead of time. So
you're going to be in Vegas. How long is it going to take for you to go to In-N-Out Burger?
I don't think we'll be going, but
you can't pass that up. You eat meat. I've seen you eat meat.
Oh yeah. I just did. I don't think that was on any of our short lists, to be honest. But
no. Go. Have you ever been there?
Mm-mm.
Go.
Oh, you need to. I
mean,
you have to have once. You don't go out that often.
You absolutely. I'll tell you a quick story about that. Some time ago, I'd flown to San Diego to have a meeting over at IDW, and Greg Goldstein, who was running the place at the time, asked me where I was staying. And I told him I was staying at this Holiday Inn that was about 3/4 of a mile from IDW. He says, "Oh, there are nicer hotels than that. Why don't you stay there?" And I said, "Well, you'll find out when you drive me back to my hotel." And he did, ultimately. And in the parking lot was an In-N-Out Burger. And he said, "Oh, I figured it out. Okay."
Easy enough. Yeah, well, so we'll have a pocket of time for it, because I know very luckily, it turns out my father's best friend has lived in Henderson for years. So we're shipping a whole bunch of the booth stuff to him, and they've been so kind as to hold on to it for us so that we can walk into the show floor and not have to use GES, because that's a great group of people if ever there was. We're renting a table from them, and it costs like $250.
Yeah.
Matt's adamant he's going to carve his initials in it, but
it makes you wonder why you're just not buying crack.
That's on the list too, but we didn't really want to publicize it.
Well, I'm not publicizing it. You are.
Yeah. Okay.
But, for $250 for, bring your own damn table.
Well, that's the thing. Like we were trying to figure all of the logistics out. I'm like, well, we could buy a foldable table ahead of that. And then the more I was thinking about it, I'm like, because they got you for the carpeting, you have to buy that. Like that's a mandatory, which is fine. Like Kyle at first was like, well, we could get some rugs. Like we'll go to Walmart, we'll just buy some floor. I'm like, yeah, but presentation's part of this. Like we can't go in looking like the hobos we are. We got to at least fake just a little bit. But
if you could read all the thought balloons on that floor, they will all be the same as what you just said. We don't want to look like a bunch of hobos.
But I thought, well, it's curious. At least like the row in which we're gonna be, we're in like the half tables. So it's us, and I think there's like a horror group next to us, and the group to the left has not actually put a name down yet. So we're hopeful that no one shows up and we can just expand our empire. But
that sounds good.
If not, we'll see how it goes.
They'll send you a bill for the other half, I'm sure.
Oh, I have no doubt. But I've been very nice to the people behind the show. They've been very nice to me. So yeah, we're excited. We've ordered every last thing we can. We just got our business cards in because we hadn't been using them for years. Most people don't really ask for them anymore, but we figured a show like this, it doesn't hurt. So there will be no spot on our table that people won't see the Samurnaut pitch somewhere. And just even the last couple of days or so, I've been kind of checking all my materials with people. And I was talking to a great gal today. She had never heard the Samuranauts pitch. And it just happened to be on my screen while we were talking about something else. And in mid-sentence, she cut me off to laugh. She's like, "Is that your pitch?" I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "Yeah, no wonder it works."
That's good.
Yeah.
You got a review.
Yeah, we'll take it. Anytime.
You bet.
What's the year been like so far for you guys? You did a show in Indianapolis, is that right?
Yeah. We went to PopCon Indy because C2E2 did not let us in.
They're mean.
It's okay. It happens every other year.
Oh,
so I feel the same way about them.
I used the wrong finger flicking that tear away, but we went to Indy PopCon. I would say that like we did well in comparison to last time we were actually in Indy. It was actually 2019. We were there for Indiana Comic-Con, which turns out to have been 4 weeks prior to this PopCon show. So we kind of arrived half-hearted going, well, I don't know who was going to come to this thing if everyone was already at a con a month ago. But it turns out we were the only independent comic book people there at all. It was all fake weapon dealers, anime pinup sellers.
Oh, that's the Indie PopCon, right?
Yeah. So we did well. Maybe not as great as we expected, but like we managed. And I would say that we did that with like Kyle only at about half strength by the end of it because poor kid got food poisoning on the last night. Which really sucked because it was his favorite restaurant in the world. And if you know Kyle, you know that guy doesn't care about food. But there's one restaurant he loves, which is Carrabba's, which is this, Olive Garden-esque whatever. Yeah. But he loves Carrabba's, and he loves this chicken marsala that they have. And we were making fun going down to Indianapolis going, hey, Kyle, that we looked it up on the website, and they have a deal. If you buy one entree, you can get a second one to take home for $10. So you could get mine and Matt's, and you could have chicken marsala the whole weekend. And he was like, I could. I won't, but I could. But we went there. He had his chicken marsala. He did a great Donald Trump impression. He just closed his eyes and ignored the rest of the room while he ate. And then he ordered a second one to go. We went back to our Airbnb. And I had to go run an errand. I think I had to go fill the car up with gas or something. I went out. I came back. And as I came back, he was polishing off the second one. Like, just having at it. I'm like, really? And he goes, oh, it's just so good. I was like, okay, well, good on you. And then, woke up the next morning and he was a paler shade of green. And I was like, oh, something not right? And he's like, I can't.
Oh, boy.
So we got to the con. He slept for the 15 minutes it took for us to commute in, and for the first hour of the con, like we're still in configuration, so he's in front of the books, and he's literally sitting in his chair like this
Oh,
for the first hour. And like Matt and I are like, there's nobody walking around. I'm like, could we like move him behind the banner? Would that? And
ship him back to Wisconsin.
no, he actually he took a nap behind the behind our booth, because there was a huge the show floor was a really weird area.
Can I
And
stop you just for 1 second?
Yeah.
I want to respond to Dean's question, which flashed up while you were talking.
oh sure.
I have not been to the Motor City show in about 10 years. I loved everyone I'd ever been to. I know the reason why Novi, Michigan is called Novi. You should find out this weekend while you're there, Dean. You will have either a great time or a somewhat less than great time. Either way, it's worth it.
Have you done that show, Mark?
Yeah, we've done Motor City. We liked it. Actually, we were trying to get into it this year, but I think because we're going to Vegas, we just opted out.
Mhm.
But we did Detroit Fan Fair a couple of years. We did Motor City a couple of years. Detroit's definitely on the short list to go back to soon.
Good.
Sure.
Yeah, we
Detroit is a great city with, I should point out, the best barbecue in the world.
Yeah, we've had good barbecue.
you know there. You say everything has the best barbecue in the world, except Baltimore.
No, you have a good place.
Well, we do. We have a good place.
Yeah, I was
What more
thinking
do you need?
Scott
That's all
Adams
Mike needs.
last year, and God, I loved it.
Well, Dean, we wish you the best and a successful weekend. And same for you guys, Mark, and the rest of the guys. I hope it is super successful.
Yeah, well, so we're rolling off, so we'll do that show, and then immediately afterwards, we fly back into town. Kyle goes home, and Matt and I are powering through to Traverse City for
Nice.
Cherry Capital Comic Con.
Well, that's good. I heard that's a very good little con.
Yeah, we were.
Tell me about it.
I mean, our friend Jim McLean did it a lot and said that we should definitely do it. It's an interesting show because the whole thing takes place in a resort. Now, again, kind of playing poverty, Matt and I are staying a town away because the resort rates just happen to be jacked up because it's Memorial Day weekend.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting little. It's a good community up there. There's a lot of great comic book people, and the community of people up in that Michigan area is good. And Michigan's a tough place because there are so many cons, so it's
there are. This is one we've been wanting to do for years. The timing worked out this time around. Matt and
Kyle's not going to be with you.
No, but it's okay. We figure he set a hard goal for Matt and I. We have to sell 13 books.
Okay.
I know you'll power through that. I know you'll excited.
Well, please, on my behalf, tell Kyle that as for Chicken Marsala, that was my stripper name.
Well, I gotta let him know that. I'm gonna see if I can't get one special guest in before I relieve myself of duty here. Hold on one sec. Hey, can I borrow a kid?
Anyone, it doesn't matter. There's thousands.
Thousands.
There's a whole brood.
I can already hear from the other room she doesn't want to, but
she's not coming.
I don't think so.
The princess.
I said she's my most comic book named child too.
I understand that. There she is.
There's Mara.
Oh. Hi.
Hi, Mira.
Hi. How you doing? Oh, you're such a cutie. And I think you know that.
She is getting cute. I cannot believe how big. Your kids keep getting bigger, like mine. That's crazy. Mine are done growing up. They're just getting older and.
I think the rest of us are getting smaller.
Yeah, she's officially 2.5 today. So.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, well, happy half birthday.
You say thank you.
Thank you. Okay, she says it's fine. Thank you.
There you
All
go.
right, Mark. We wish you guys all the best. We want to hear from you when you come back after Traverse City. We'll get you back on. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
we want to read about it all on Pop culture squad.
Well, we
Oh, you
certainly
might,
do.
you might just get one of those out of me.
All right.
All
Excellent.
right.
All right, guys,
All right. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Take it
Thanks
easy,
for coming.
Mark. Have a good trip.
we will.
All right.
All right. That's a lot of good stuff. We are going to bring in our other guests tonight. We have another pair of comic book folks coming in. We have a lot to talk about. I'm very excited. Returning to the show is Amit Tishler, who you missed last time because you were in the problems with tubes and wires and whatnot.
Tubes and wires.
So we're
Yeah.
excited for you to be able to have this opportunity. And he's bringing along a guest, Elliot Sperl, and I have a lot to talk to him about as well. So here they come. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey,
Hello.
Thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for being here tonight. We have a new book coming out that we want to talk about, and a lot more. I need to get this out of the way quickly. I need to let you know, Elliot, that Louise Belcher is my spirit animal,
Mine too, actually.
and we go to sleep to Bob's Burgers every night.
It's fantastic. I love Bob's Burgers. Also, fun fact, you were talking about Traverse City, Michigan just a
Sure.
second ago.
Yep,
Guess who has two thumbs and is about 2 hours away from there?
there you go. Well, there you go. See that little thing. The only reason I know that is from Home Alone, right? Isn't that where they were going to trying to get to Sheboygan? There was somewhere along the line.
No. That was Sheboygan with an S.
Oh, so
Wisconsin.
there are two.
There's two Sheboygans. I'm from the cooler.
There's too many Sheboygans. There are too many.
Sure you are.
Obviously, Embiid. Everyone knows this in the Midwest.
Of course.
So you're not from the one that misspells the name.
That's true. I'm from the OG Sheboygan. I really don't
It's
know.
just a French thing. All right. So let's talk about this first. The Last Wardens comes out July 17th. It is from Mad Cave. It is Amit, your follow-up to Eden Frost with them. I've read the first issue, and I've read a bunch of what you've said about it ahead of time. And one of the things you said is that it's a sheep in wolf's clothing, and I like that expression. I was pleasantly entertained with as I was reading this first issue. I enjoyed the story that I was getting. I was furious at some characters, probably deservedly so. I was nicely entertained by the world you were creating, and then all hell broke loose, and I can't wait to figure out what goes on next. And like as we say on this show often, that's what makes a good first issue.
Thank you. But it's funny, like we've been starting to start doing these interviews in the last few weeks, and I know exactly who you're talking about when you're saying hated some characters. Like we're both like, oh, Joe's getting a lot of hate. Yeah. Like, there's a character there that gets a very visceral reaction from everybody that reads this, and that's very intentional, but it's very gratifying to see that.
Yeah, there's a piece here. Let me see. Keep talking. I'll find it. There's a piece of writing that I totally saw and read differently.
I know which one.
Because he said a hole. There's something about a hole in her life, and I'm like, oh yeah, the a-hole. That's basically what
there is a moment in the script that when we wrote it in, James V. Emmett, who's our editor at Mad Cave, usually when he comments on something in the script, it's always like, oh, it's a note. Have you considered this and this? That was literally just a note for like, oh, I hate this guy so much. And I'm like, good, all right. Excellent.
Oh, he had an opportunity to be redeemed, and this is the part about storytelling I like to get into, and I appreciate this, but like I'm reading it, I'm getting through this, and like there's a point where you're like, oh, maybe he has an opportunity here to be redeemable, to be somebody that I could have some empathy for, and he just takes it and takes my face and just shoves it in the ground.
Yep. There's an almost moment of like, hey,
Right.
is this gonna yeah, and then falling into bringing in all the and that's a recurring theme in the Last Wardens. It's the dirty laundry and the baggage that people bring with them,
Sure.
and the toxicity that creates, and a failure just haunting every single character in this cast all throughout this story and even before it. There's a lot of themes that we put into this when we were developing the story that we hope it's always very gratifying when people notice these things and kind of talk to you about it, because you're like, oh, we didn't actually know if people are going to register some of these like more subtle or nuanced emotional moments, but it always feels very good when people do. About that character, all I can say is you haven't exactly seen the last of him.
Oh,
That's
wonderful.
all I can say. Despite what it looks like.
And now everybody's going to have to remember this conversation for 2 months and buy the comic book.
Well, you can always watch it on YouTube. It's always going to be available there. I first of all, I mean, like the first 2 covers are just fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
Zach Howard and Sky Patridge, fantastic artists, love it. Frank's, I mean, all the art and everything in this book is really good. Elliot, this is your first comic, yes?
Yeah.
What? So
Yes.
why did you let him convince you to do this? How did this work out?
Well, at gunpoint, anything is possible. But no, we're both big fans of supernatural horror.
Keep talking, Elliot.
But we both wanted to. We started working together back on Starburns on HBO's Animals, and he brought me on to another gig, and we just realized that we worked really well together. And he obviously Amit has this amazing grasp of history, which was really important for this 1970s period piece. And I like to bring some of the more how would you call them monster designs, character designs, some of the more artistic elements to the story.
Mm-hmm.
So I was obviously influenced by a lot of since it's a 70s piece, Evil Dead, a little bit of Scooby-Doo. There's also weirdly some Jaws sprinkled on top in this story that you'll see later. But we realized we just worked well together, and we wanted to talk about we wanted to tell a story about failure. How to chew it up, spit it out, and ask for seconds. So kind of just dove in and started writing.
Amit, you were born in Israel?
That is correct.
How old were you when you came over to the States?
This was 2010, so I was 28.
Okay.
And now everybody's doing the math. Like, how old is me? There you go.
Do me a favor.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what comic books are like in Israel.
So that is a loaded question, because first of all, there isn't a lot of comic book culture in general. It's not a big part of just the culture. Very few local creators that are actually active, and also very limited imports, just because it's not a very popular medium there. So there are maybe a couple of comic book shops in Tel Aviv, in my hometown, that I know of. Maybe there's more today than there were before, but it's still extremely niche, because whoever wants to essentially like have comics distributed and sold locally needs to import it specifically from like Diamond and stuff. It's not as simple, right? It takes longer and it's very custom. When I was a kid, it was actually worse. So I was always like a big pop culture nerd, and I had to really go out of my way to try and get the stuff that I want. And in that case, I started like a lot of different kids, like from Marvel, DC Comics, in order to get just the newest issue of anything, whether it was X-Men or Spider-Man or anything that I was reading at the time. I kind of had to like hop onto a bus 30, 40 minutes to the center of the city, to the one store that maybe will have a couple of issues there scattered, a bunch of, like below a few. Like I had to go pretty far just to get anything. Often if my parents would travel, usually to places like, the States, I would go like, bring me anything that you can find. So it was difficult. It was difficult when I was growing up, but it was also very precious because of that, because every time you would be able to get something, it felt special. It wasn't as accessible as now, like, I'll just go onto Amazon. I'll just go to Global Comics and, like download a PDF. Like none of that was accessible. So I started my, like my passion, like a lot of animators like Elliot and I, like it started from comics and then evolved into filmmaking, animation, and so on. And that kind of sipped into our professions. But yeah, it was definitely a crime of passion that I had to work pretty hard to cultivate and sustain during that time, because we're talking like 90s or early 90s when I really started getting into it. Also, nothing was really localized, so it really helped me with English, right? Learning how to write the language, learning how to speak the language. It's not my first language. So I definitely thank pop culture for teaching me a lot of the slang or getting me ready for what ended up being a pretty significant life change down the line.
And now Elliot can give you Sheboygan slang.
That's true. There's a whole slew of it I can teach you.
Well,
That's international comics for you.
I want to give you some kudos on the language, particularly the dialogue in the first issue of Last Wardens. I thought that not only did you localize it for the area, but also for the time period, and I thought that really cemented the time period in what you're, because there's some things I'm like, oh, they're using a word that we kind of use today, but they're using it a little bit, just slightly. Oh yeah. Oh, we're not in today. It took me a minute because I don't remember if there was a date, but I didn't see a date in the first page. And it took me a minute, and I'm like, oh, okay, I got it. We're back here. And it was by the language and the words that they were using that I told me that I was behind. Later, there are historical dates that are given that the reader will be able to pick up and determine where it is. But just the language brought me to that spot, and I thought it was well done and easy.
Yeah, we actually have a little document on our database with like slang words that are of the, because we knew that we would need that in order for everything to feel more authentic. I think in the last, like in the print version of the issue, there is actually like the first page will have the year, which is like it's 1975.
Right.
There's a very strategic choice for multiple reasons that we picked that I think start creeping in. Actually, like it happens in the story, because this is not a big spoiler, but it's happening right after the Vietnam War. So 1975, her brother was essentially MIA for 2 years. Nobody knew what happened to him. Her father is, a Korean War vet. So there's a lot of baggage that's just related to that time period. So once we set it during that time, we really milked it for all it's got.
So
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Bob. Go.
No, I'm waiting for your response.
I'm just babbling. It's insane.
No, you have real world experience at that time. I was.
Yes. 75 was a year before I moved to New York to join DC Comics. So and I was a pretty old man then. But I remember when I was a kid watching a movie on television, black and white, and the movie was made in the 30s, and I asked my father what 23 skidoo meant. And he said, that beats the hell out of me, and walked away.
Did you find out when you went to New York? Is that when you found out?
23 Skidoo? No, I don't know how I found that. I think a fortune cookie or something. I don't know.
It's a great. I love that story. It's one of my favorite stories because it's like in a Bugs Bunny cartoon or something like that, right? It's got to be something like that ubiquitous that expression is.
No, it's it's in a lot of like newspaper comics from the 20s and 30s.
Oh, okay. So that's
so I think it was in sort of common lingo to the
Yeah.
extent that in those days that really were before network radio, we had a common lingo. It's interesting times. We those of us who live 100 years later forget what they didn't have back then.
right.
You know,
You guys are looking like you don't know what it means. Do you know?
No, we have no idea what that means. I mean,
So
at least-
have you heard the expression 23 Skidoo? Give somebody the 23 Skidoo.
no.
I think so. Maybe in
Yeah,
passing.
it's something that's like in that collective thing you may have heard. It means to give somebody the shove off, right?
Ah,
But
very good, Bob.
it comes from the Flatiron Building, and the Flatiron Building is on 23rd Street in New York City, and the wind that blew up town would cause dresses to get flung. So the cops would, give people the 23 Skidoo. Come on, get out of here, guys. Stop trying to see.
ah.
I see.
I still go down there just to check that out. Yeah,
There we go.
See,
See, I know what I'm talking about, Dino.
Thank you.
he knows. And by the way, that was right across the street from where the toy building used to be. So before the toy fair, I would go to that building for like meetings,
Yeah.
to negotiate deals for comic books that would sell very badly. And I remembered that story. And I would just stand in front of the place, or walk to like a restaurant or something like that. And no, nobody's skirt was billowing. God, I was pissed.
They were.
I blame it on Dean.
You didn't notice it as much because you didn't bother wearing a skirt while walking around there.
He was hoping.
I didn't say that.
What?
Apparently, there you go. First Second Publishing used to be in the Flatiron Building. So, so what you say that this book is about failure, and I see that. I can see that as I've read it. Why write a book about that? Why is that important?
Well, I think it's something that marks us. It's a universal experience. The way we deal with failure is kind of who defines us as people. Also, going back to the 1970s, time period, it's also a timeless experience. It's something that's true then as it is today, even more so, right?
Yeah, I think more so.
That's fair.
I'm jaded.
So yeah, it's something, dealing, with failure and rejection. It's something that's just, it's a point to grow from, I think. So
Yeah, it's pretty ubiquitous. I mean, you could take us as an example, right? Like when and I'm going to tie this into the creative process, right? When we create a new story to pitch, the expectation going in, and I don't know if people who kind of come from the outside or are just consumers are aware of this, but you're kind of going in with the expectation of 99% chance of failure, right? It's almost always going to be a no. And you're just fighting for the off chance that the buyer is going to say like yes to whatever it is you're pitching. And I can tell you that the last Wardens was definitely born from this like cocktail of, let's say, rejection and persistence. Right? In practice, it's one of our oldest and most iterated upon ideas. The first time we pitched this was a version all the way back in 2018. And we've spent months developing it to the point of sale. And eventually it found a home, right? But with every failure, with every rejection, we didn't just double down or lash out. We just decided, all right, well, this didn't work. What can we conclude from it? We decided to refine it, examine it from every angle, take the feedback that we were given and just interpret it and iterate on the story until we had a new version that's ready for show, and rinse, repeat. Now, another interesting fun fact to that is that our main protagonist, like Danielle Pryor, she literally came out of this iteration process, right? She wasn't even in the first versions of the last Wardens, which, by the way, also had a different name. Our first iteration was called Warlocked. After that, we renamed it into Night Legion. And in both versions, it took a while until Danielle Pryor manifested, and now she's the front and center of this whole story. But the point is that with each rejection, it did become tighter, right? It became stronger. It became more emotionally resonant. And the trick, I think, was just to own the failure, learn from it, and do better. Took 4 or 5 years for this specific one, but it finally is coming out in its ultimate form. So I think that's an aspirational lesson. The other thing that's, I think, in issue 1, a lot of this is you're starting to see it, but you'll see it more throughout the journey. Every character here is a result of experiencing failure in one way or another. From Danielle's father, which is very, very obvious with him, to Bruce, like her brother, to each of the Wardens, and all the way to how we're seeing Danielle deal with failure. One of her biggest failings as a character is that she is stubborn. And that's an endearing quality very, very early on. But it's also a problem that she's going to have to get over with this story, knowing when to let go, knowing when, okay, to cut your losses. That's a big lesson that character has to learn. So we want to show both sides of failure, when it is good to just learn from and iterate and keep going, and when it is actually the right time to say, I have lost and now I need to just get my conclusions and walk away.
Yeah, that's good. Doubling down is the worst concept anybody ever came up with. If it didn't work, he's big an asshole about it. I said, well, okay, that's great if you happen to have been president, but in real life, you're just another asshole. So I get a little scared when people say, well, no, I'm doubling down. I said, no, we're not in Las Vegas. Go away.
There is an endearing part to it as well. I mean, doubling down isn't always negative, because it could also be persistence. If we decided, there was nothing here in this story, then we would have just given up, right? We ended up doubling down, but not on the version. We went there is something here, we're going to make it work. We persisted. So that's another version of it that could be interpreted as positive.
Persistence is the greatest skill a freelancer can have.
Yeah,
always.
True.
At all, yeah, there you go.
At
all times. If you don't persist, and I don't care, you could be a musician, you can be a painter, it doesn't matter. The world doesn't want you until they know you're great, and it's up to you to show them that you're great. It's just that simple. So persistence is a great thing. Being a jerk about it.
Yeah, that's
showing my age, but I've seen enough jerks.
Mike, as they kind of presented us with this concept where they kept working on it, coming back as an editor, and as you were, shepherding stories that eventually made it into print. Did you have experiences where people came to you with something very raw and eventually you found something, or no, you didn't have that?
All the time. And sometimes there would be pushback from the creative talent. And if it's not a company-owned project, they usually win those arguments because it's their creation. But if you accept the idea that an editor can actually look at things because he or she did not have to create it, and therefore is an outsider looking in on it, it's worth listening to and considering at the very least. So I respect the act, and I personally enjoy the act of going in and finding something that can make something better. That's part of the catalytic role of the editor. And I have to admit, I love that. That's probably my favorite part of the job. other than the direct deposit thing.
That helps.
Fair.
Yeah.
I wrote down one of the things as I was reading the book struck me. So my sister's name is Danielle, and I love, and it is endearing to me. And I don't know if it's just me. There's a lot of times I question whether it's just me that's getting moved by things, but the fact that they call her Danny, her friends call her Dan's, it's so like I want to give her a hug. Like there's that familiarity by shortening her name. Like we know it is Danielle, but then like there's my sister goes by Danny, so it's like I really enjoy that, the way that this, and that's one of the things that I guess I keep coming back to. What really I enjoy about this book is I'm immersed in it. It becomes something that I want to know these characters. I want them to succeed. I also want some of them to get punched in the face, which they do. So that's good. Elliot, how did you find this experience in, coming back to this? I mean, a lot of your experience, your professional experiences in storyboarding and animation. How was this different? What did you learn differently?
Oh, that's a great question. Being really honest, I think every animator, artist that I know is a creator at heart. So being able to team up with someone who just kind of gets you in a weird way.
I know animators who were creators and like have gone back and forth. The people.
Oh yeah, that super happens too. I mean, Amit and I talk about a lot about that too. But yeah, I just think it was a wild experience, honestly. I mean, so a little bit of history. Amit and I have 2 other titles that are coming out in 2025.
Cool.
So this is weird because this is the last property that we worked on, but it's also not the first. So
it's the last that we worked on, but one of the first to come out.
Yes, exactly. Sorry. Yeah. So.
Right.
That's how it goes. It's weird.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in the middle step of this process in a weird way. So got the first writing script thing down to a pat, but the whole podcast circuit and whatnot, that's still new to me. So Meat is luckily much more experienced in that, so he's helping me out.
Your comment that animators want to be storytellers.
Oh yeah.
I immediately thought about how Jack Kirby got his start as an in-betweener at Max Fleischer's studios working on Betty Boop and Popeye.
Oh yeah.
And I think he had a pretty good career in comics after that, creating all kinds of magic. So perhaps what we need are more people like Max and Dave Fleischer, but I certainly understand where you're coming from. It's a wonderful experience. I have a lot of friends who are or have been animators, and a couple of people I think need to get out of the studio a little bit more often.
You see that too.
Yeah, there's
also totally not guilty of that.
You're right. Elliot, what is that behind you? The painting.
All right, this is reversed. I drew this way back in the day, either late high school or early college. I honestly forget. But I was always a big fan of Skydoll, the comic series Skydoll, and it's clearly based. Oh God, it's reversed. There we go. It's clearly based on that sort of style.
How old were you when you did that?
Oh my God, I was young. I like I said, I'm back in Michigan. I'm visiting my parents, so this is like the house. So they threw it up and framed it. So it's there.
You're catching Elliot in nostalgia mode, immersive.
It's really a nice piece.
Well, thank you.
I mean, obviously, or otherwise I wouldn't ask. I said, "What's that piece of shit doing?"
I would have cracked up though if you did. That would have been hilarious. But no, thank you. Yeah, it's one of the few pieces I have scattered around the house. I don't need to somehow pick up the computer and give you a guided tour to show you the rest. But
yeah, I do the same thing, but my daughter thinks my ego is big enough.
Yeah, don't worry about it. There's Mike's house half museum. So there's that.
That's just my bedroom when I'm in it.
Yeah. I want to touch back on kind of how this whole process has worked. And I want to bring you into this, Ellie, a little bit more, because you said stuff about, kind of designing the characters and the monster stuff like that. How much did you do in terms of designing what the monsters look like, compared to what, the artists worked,
Oh, all right. Great question. So yeah, I was responsible for all the initial character designs. Actually, it went through a couple iterations, but it started off hilariously kind of cartoony, and then we refined it. We skipped past that iteration pretty quick, but we decided to go a little bit more realistic with it, and then I did what is essentially an art guide for the entire thing, which is this whole part of the process in our development. And we collected all the images, all the reference images, my artwork, everything else. We needed 1970s references, obviously, and a lot of deep dives into Oregon in 1970s too. So a lot of historical attention as well. Combined them all into an art guide and handed them off to Rui, who just ran with it.
And how was his reaction to that coming, at it that way?
I'm sorry, what?
What was his reaction to that? Getting that guide?
I mean, I would hope it's useful. I'm just gonna say he loved it.
That's a good answer.
It was his favorite part of his day. Let me tell you. No, I have no idea, but it was useful for, I think, the entire team for sure.
Tell us about your artist, will you?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Your artist.
Oh, Rui?
Yes. So it's Rui Vieira. Is that right?
Yes.
Vieira.
He is so ridiculously good at drawing monsters, by the way. I mean, you saw it in issue 1, but just keeps getting better and better and better. Fun fact, actually, about him. So when Amit and I were writing the script, we initially had a whole back and forth with the layout, where it goes between something like very, breaks the panels. It's very like disturbed. And then we have something that's a bit more balanced and kind of like what you'd standardly see. But Rui added this whole other extra element into it with these more chaotic panels. And Amit and I looked at it and looked at the setup of it and realized we had to go back into all 6 scripts and rewrite everything and add on all the new layouts just to kind of adhere to like what he added in. And it was so much better. It was such like a great.
Yeah. I mean, we made an element out of it.
Yeah.
Basically.
Here we go.
We made it into a rule that we have incorporated into scripts. Where the philosophy became, because again, it kind of came out, as Elliot said, out of him just intuitively doing it. And then we went like, ooh, this creates a certain vibe that we ended up just like making into canon. So every time you see, like you split it to 3 parts, right? There is what we call the chaotic layout, which is what you're seeing in the first few pages, like everything is kind of like a little broken, a little fractured. What you're looking at right now is what we call the invasive layout, which is kind of, basically like you're getting, something gets disrupted and it always looks like these red veins that take over the screen because that is the representation of the enemy, of the drifter. And the balance just looks like a standard comic. It feels a lot more structured. Those are the majority of the pages. Now, the way that we broke it out over time is that we said, okay, the Wardens themselves, as the readers will find out, every time that they enter the scene, like you said, all hell breaks loose. It is absolute chaos.
Right.
When the drifter, the villain of the story, or the entity comes in and invades, it feels disruptive, right? Like it feels like you've been disrupted, all of these veins crawling in and essentially like taking over the comic. And whenever Danny is the one that's driving the scene, everything feels more balanced because a big part of this story is her journey of kind of becoming a team leader. She butts heads with them a lot. It's going to go very badly. But the idea is that by the end of it, she ends up balancing everything out. So the emotional driver of the scene is what determines the layout from that point on.
I think that's fantastic. I think that is it is a very like I said earlier, it's very immersive experience, and the way that you've kind of led things through, and I will say that it's it's something you do well, Amit. What you did in Eden Frost, where there were a lot of similar, emotional rides. Like you get on this roller coaster, or you're in a toboggan today, and tomorrow you're in a wagon, but you're in that and you're on your way, and you need to ride with whatever the environment is that you're experiencing as a reader. And I think that's to do that well is not as easy as it sounds.
Thank you. Look, it's something that I think we incorporate into. You've seen me do that in Eden Frost, and we incorporate it into everything that we do. Like, everything has to have a very strong and very raw emotional core, because in the end, I feel like that is what separates the experience of, like, oh, I just read this was kind of fun, and I'm done with it. Whether it's like that or something that really stays with you, right? And that you end up thinking about after you're done. And I think any good, because both me and Elliot are big media consumers, whether it's video games, TV, comics, shadow puppets, whatever. Like, we're big media consumers in general. But I think what really like sticks with you is when something forces you, like when you're done watching it, you're done playing it, you're done reading it, but you end up thinking about it afterwards, or it ends up making you question certain things or think back on things on your life that this kind of like tapped into. And I think that is a goal that we have with everything that we do. So even with future titles, and definitely with my past titles, you'll always see that, like the search for that kind of emotional moment that makes you feel like you're seeing the character, like you're understanding them, and like you're part of the journey. It's not a fleeting emotion. It can't ever, and it's a fine line. Like, it can't feel manipulative. Like, I'm doing this because I want you to feel sad. It has to feel very real. Like, this would be someone that you know, or a situation you've been in. Like, that's kind of, I feel like, an important element in anything that we do.
I think that's great. I mean, that's what it's working. It's working.
Good. Thank you.
I mean, great writers are not afraid to take on their readers' emotions. I mean, Kafka was not a barrel of laughs. And it's good to challenge them. Not a lot of people like to be challenged, and that used to upset me. But now I figure, fuck them.
Yeah. No, and that's true. Like, I think that's something that we also go back and forth on a lot, and we always end up, I feel like, making the right choice about it, where I think the general philosophy that I've taken and that we've taken together as well is to not play it too safe, and to treat the reader like a smart human being who can figure things out on their own and can pick up whatever needs to be picked up on the go without being spoon-fed or without having to over-explain things. Like, because in the end, and this is true to game design, it's true to filmmaking, it's true to comic books, to writing, to anything really. When a reader or a consumer comes out of an experience feeling like they were smart, like they were engaged with it, like, you've presented me something and I figured out the clue. Ooh, I know where this is going. I see what you did there. Your consumer ends up feeling smarter. Like, it actually feels more like a conversation as opposed to just like, look at all the pretty colors. And I think that's what it comes down to. It has to feel like a conversation.
And that treats your reader with respect.
Yeah.
And that's a critical thing to establish early on. I mean, they're making that same investment in you, except that they're like paying money. But
sure.
They're making that investment in you. They want to respect you. They don't pick up the book to have a bad time. So if you can give them something to walk away with, that's value added.
100%.
Yeah.
I think we're hitting on something that I wanted. I was trying to get to earlier when Mike and I do our thing. So I'm gonna bring it up now. There was a quote that I saw out there today, and I'm going to bring you guys into one of the pop culture Squadcast stories, and that's how much we are absolutely loving Wonder Woman by Tom King and Daniel Sampere and the rest of it. So it is one of our favorite books out there right now. And there was a quote that somebody said. I guess somebody had talked to Tom, and he's like, if you think that Wonder Woman is a political book, then you're identifying with the villains way too much, right? His point was that this Sovereign is a bad guy. The villain in this is a really Joker level villain. If you get involved in the politics of it and you're upset that it's politicky, then I think you're feeling a little bit in the wrong way. And I liked what he said about it, and I think that's important. And it's basically kind of what we're saying here. Like you can make your own choices. You can make your own analysis of what it is you're consuming, but you're also telling on yourself when you make those choices.
That's true.
That's true.
To a guy as badly wired as I am, everything can be political. And I firmly believe everything is political, which just makes me an incredible asshole. But I get Tom's point. There is a time when you have to take sort of a step back and say, wait a moment, this is not about reality.
Right.
And enjoy the ride. Doesn't mean you have to turn your brain off. You probably shouldn't. It's a bad idea. But enjoy the ride.
I want to I can kind of reflect that into Eden Frost if we can. I mean,
Yeah.
there are. You can read Eden Frost very politically if you want to, but there's a lot more to it, and the story is not about the politics. The story is about humanity, and it's about a lot all of the things that make you live than it is about.
For me, it's about the relationship between the siblings.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what that book is all about to me.
100%. And by the way, thank you so much for saying this, because it's I think we saw each other the first time you were actually in the panel in New York, so
right.
Heard me talk about this before, but I'll add on top of, like, with Eden Frost specifically,
Which, by the way, the trade comes out next Wednesday.
Yes, early copy. This book is beautiful. And kudos to Mad Cave, because their team just did an incredible job in producing this. So with Eden Frost specifically, I think one of the primary philosophies that I had, and it's a decision that I made that me and Elliot are certainly going to carry on with our work together as well. And you'll see it in our future titles, because like what Mike said, in the end, everything is kind of political. If you're a writer, and not political in a sense of like left, right, but everything is political in that your opinions, whether they're your emotional opinions, whether it is your fiscal opinions, really anything that's in your head is going to come out in your stories one way or another, right? You can't really distance yourself from the work and say, oh no, it's just a work of fiction I did. It's just a joke. No, it is part of you, right? And it's part of you putting out to the world. I think one of the things that with Eden Frost specifically was so important to me was that it doesn't read as a story that's for a certain political side. Because in my head, in my mind, and my hope is whoever reads a story like Eden Frost, it can be somebody who's on the right, it could be someone on the left, someone on the center. The things that I'm talking about, the values that I'm projecting there should be ideally universal, right? And it is, in the end of the day, a book about identity. And more specifically, it is about identity politics and the weaponization of identity politics, which, needless to say, right now seems extremely relevant. But it is very much a cautionary tale about that. And I made the decision early on of never identifying it with a single political philosophy. It is about those kids. It is about their relationship, and it's about how everything that's happening to the world is affecting them and how they're perceiving it.
Right.
And part of the reason is because, and I feel like this is something that's really often missed in the media discourse nowadays, which is you can make your work political and just let your message speak for itself, or you can make it very blatantly political. And at that point, you are kind of picking a side and alienating the other side. And that's okay as a decision, but you're not really having a conversation. To me, the biggest achievement is, and this is without stating on whatever side you are on every argument, right? If you're making the decision to convey a message, the biggest thing you can hope for is that someone who often disagrees with you about a lot of things does agree with you about the thing that that piece is talking about. That's the achievement. When they see themselves in the work, regardless of where they are on the identity politics part of the spectrum, that's the part that we're missing today in general, just the ability to talk to each other. And I think that media, like comics, like books, like media in general, has that power, and I feel like we're losing it the minute we're just like saying this is only for this audience, or making it too obvious and making it very agnostic, making it more about the humanity of our characters or the humanity of our stories. I feel like is a big strength that I hope more creators do, because it kind of like it prevents that constant division of this work is only for these people, this work is only, it should be for everybody, because we should agree about these very basic things about human decency or ethics or moralities, things that should be above identity politics, and unfortunately aren't once you're kind of
nothing is right now.
Yeah.
You can get your point if indeed you have a point that you want to get across.
Yeah.
You can get it across better through the eyes and the minds of your characters than through your proselytizing. If you see the change in those characters and see why they've changed, why they've evolved, why they're hesitant, why they're afraid, you're making a point.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why, by the way, in part of our process is always to start with a statement. So every narrative that we construct always starts with a statement or an anchor that the minute you kind of say it, you see it everywhere. Character settings. So again, this is why Elliot mentioned like the theme of failure, right? Once you see that, you see how it gets applied to literally every aspect of The Last Wardens as it goes along. When I talk about identity, or I like identity as a construct, or identity weaponized, you see it everywhere in Edenfrost. Edenfrost is now, like we can look at it in the rear view mirror, and you're going, this is beyond, it's not really about Jewish identity. It's not really about communist identity or it's that concept in general, and each character perceives it differently, and the output is very, very different, which is why that message is and should be treated as agnostic. And it's a red flag. It's a cautionary tale. Identity is a construct. When weaponized, it can be used to divide, unite, and annihilate any group of people. That's the thing that I even said on the panel in New York. I feel like no matter where you are on the political spectrum, you could look at that and say, haha, yes, I agree with that. The minute you jump to the next step of going, and that's totally describing the other side, now you've missed the point. And my hope is that something like that makes you have that little moment of like, but wait, wasn't that the point? That's the hope. That's the thing that I'm really hoping, like, to create that little pause and hesitation.
And this is why we have Amit on the show.
Well said, man.
Sorry, I get into it.
No, it was great.
I'm very glad. I'm glad we can talk about this. I'm glad that you're here. And you're right. I think, and I hope that it truly does get its due, because I think Edenfrost came at the right time, and it tells the story in the right way. It's very much about, it's very much a story that you can tell or that you can consume that is rife and full of identity and how someone's identity shapes them and their perceptions and how they are perceived. And yet at the very core of it, there are two siblings who are in danger and are fighting for their lives, regardless of how any of all of that. It's just we're humans and we are talking about what it's like to be humans.
And since we have not been able to shake off our addiction to armed conflict, these are stories that need to be told. There is humanity behind all of this, no matter how evil and how black and white it seems. There are humans involved. And as storytellers, our job is to get to those humans.
I want to change topics just a minute. We're gonna leave that. We're gonna leave that for a sec. One of the things that's very interesting to me about The Last Wardens is 6 issues right from the get-go. We know this is going to be 6. 6 is a different number these days. A lot of people go 5. A lot of people go even going 4. 6. Why? What do you did you push for that? Do you feel that that's enough space for you?
Elliot, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like the right amount to finish the story. We're back a lot in there. As you saw, I mean, as we go along, there's a lot of action sequences that you guys have yet to see where it gets kind of out of hand. So we definitely needed the space to kind of make sure, all the chaotic
For both the
chaos.
show and the tell.
Sorry, what did you say, man?
I said for both the show and the tell.
Yes, the show, the tell.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's very story arc based. Like, the world of The Last Wardens is, and it's like every series. It's you'll get a satisfying story from reading those 6 issues, but of course there is room for telling a lot more stories in that world and wherever it could lead to. I think in the end of the day, 6 issues was enough for us to be able to achieve everything that we wanted to with this issue, because it's a roller coaster. What you saw in the first issue doesn't stop there. Like, it once kind of like, the lid goes, like everything gets thrown off, but we've built a very clear arc for Danny as the lead here from beginning to end. And I think early on when we were kind of like discussing with Mad Cave, like, this is what we want to do, and they asked us, like, how much do you think you'll need for that? That was more or less what we settled on, and they were okay with it because they're awesome. So we just went with it, and we made it. And, this is something you've seen also me do in Eden Frost. We drag that mystery. Woo! Boy, do we drag it. Like, it's something that we both love doing, that I certainly love doing. It's the idea of, like, no, again, treating your reader with respect. I know you want the answers right now, but I'm not going to give it to you. And part of it is because it's a lot more satisfying once you get to it. I remember, like, having this moment of even talking to James, to the editor in Eden Frost, going, like, in issue 2, I kind of like really pulled back, and I don't give people the golem until very, very late, right? In that 4-issue run. And he was like, aren't you? He was a little anxious about it. He was just like, should we do something that's like, no, we wait and we make it count. But because once this big moment happens, there is, and we even saw it, like, how the reviews came out. Literally, once you kind of get to issue 3, people went a little nuts with it. And a big part of it is because you made it count, and you've satisfied your reader with the result that you brought them. Like, the wait feels like it was worth it, and it feels intentional, which here it is as well. This is the longer run, and we are very specifically telling the entire story through Danielle's perspective, because she's the audience proxy. It's part of the reason why we created her. We needed a character that is that doesn't know what's going on, and that's experiencing what it feels like when the Wardens come to town. That's kind of the experience that she's going through. And by the end of it, she starts getting answers, but it really takes a lot for her to get there.
And that's the point. Like, you've done that because the reader identifies and attaches themselves to Danielle from the beginning of the story. And so when everything goes crazy, she has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what's going on. And we're together. So we're bonded, me and the reader and Danielle. So that worked very well, especially in the first issue.
That's awesome. That's the highest praise for us, because that's the big thing that we're banking on. That journey. Basically, we kind of treated it almost like hey, this is 24. We're with you in semi-real time, right? You're experiencing this with her. You will never know something that she doesn't know at that moment, and vice versa. So that also means that the mystery itself and how we unravel it, because we also wanted to feel very organic. Like, we never wanted to do a big exposition dump where we just, okay, listen, this is what's going on. This is who the Wardens are. Like, it had to feel like when she's getting any information, it feels valuable. It's like driving 40 minutes and getting that one issue of Uncanny X-Men, even though you missed like 5 of them, but that's the only store in Tel Aviv that sells it, damn it. But it feels precious because you finally got a little piece of the puzzle, and you're going to hold on to it, and you're going to try and put them together slowly and carefully. And when you get more of it, it feels like an achievement. It feels valuable. So that's kind of how we constructed this whole thing. By the end of the 6 issues, you'll get enough of it to get a pretty good idea of more or less what's happening. And our hope is that you'll want a lot more, because there is a lot more behind it.
Awesome.
Our goal is to actually do kind of the same thing for the other Wardens as well going forward.
Yeah.
In the other books. And to boot, little fun fact, we drop hints in this book that I won't spoil, but those looking closely will be able to kind of get a little bit more information about the Wardens.
Yes.
Cool.
There's little Easter eggs.
Little Easter eggs. Yeah.
I like that. Elliot, I want to come back to you a little bit, because I want to keep you in this conversation. What was your experience growing up? Were you a comic book reader growing up?
Big comic book reader.
What was your?
Oh boy, Spider-Man, Batman, classic. I was raised around the Spider-Man clone saga in the 90s, okay. So that's not when I was brought into comics, but that's certainly like when I was.
That is your heyday. That's your.
Like, so the Ben Reilly shout out in the new Spider-Man movie was hilarious to me for so many reasons. But initially, I think
Howard Mackey will apologize to you personally.
I love Ben Reilly. I'll defend him forever. I think he's great. But I think what got me into comics initially was, and weirdly enough, animation, is Miyazaki. I read the initial Nausicaa series in the comics like when I was really, really young, and that just talk about creating a world, So that really pulled me in. And it's funny because growing up, I wanted to initially start my career in comics. It took going to college and realizing like, no, I kind of always saw the moving for some reason in my head to be like, maybe I should try animation. So, that's just been my weird journey with it.
Where did you go?
Oh, I went to School of Visual Arts, New York. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, speaking of Sheboygan, growing up here, like there was a comic book store that was really, really beautiful here in Sheboygan. And unfortunately, I think there was a restaurant above it that had a grease fire and just the whole thing burned down. Which was so sad because I grew up going there like every weekend. It was so that hit heavy when that disappeared. But yeah, just always loved comics.
Which is why you burned down.
Imagine how you burned down the store. Just loving the media.
Well, don't. Until I burned down the store, I really loved it.
Yeah, right. I really loved them. It had to stop.
The elements of growing up loving the medium is critical to becoming a comics professional, or at least a comic storyteller, and all kinds of storytellers. So for a long time, the comics business eschewed the younger end of the audience, decades. And I thought that was horrible. And he's getting these bloody fights with major distributors and stuff. Like, we don't want kids coming into our comic stores. So, well, yeah, then who's going to show up 5 years from now? Who's going to show up 10 years from now? But in my mind, because I'm a greedy bastard, I'm thinking, and who's going to write and draw these things?
Yeah.
Any gatekeeping never really works out and never really looks good in hindsight.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, I've told this story on this show before a long time. With listeners will see. I remember one of the first times I went into a comic shop, like, because I just, growing up in the '80s, early '80s, you just got comics at the convenience store on the racks. Unfortunately, somebody decided they shouldn't sell First Comics there, so I had to finally go into a comic shop to get those. Because I couldn't
Screw them. although good for your comic shop owner.
But in the comic shop, I met the first person who was a comic book professional that I've ever met, and it took me 40 years or so to meet him again. And that's Jack Harris, who good friend of the show and Mike's good friend. But he was there in the shop, and like I'm like, you go into this shop and you see these things. I know I loved comics. I know I love cartoons, and I went there, and then you get to this thing. You're like, there are so many more around. Like, and there's a box, and they're like, two for $1. And this is like from 10 years ago. And I'm like, oh, I'll take this. And I bought a comic and I put it down on the counter. And this old guy standing next to me, he was old then. He's really old now. He's like, oh, I edited that book. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I have no idea. I'm 12, and then, years later I learned, who was that editor? Oh, it's Jack C. Harris, and he's in this picture now with me. So
cool.
So there you go.
Jack is actually, I think he's a year older than I am, and we instantly became very good friends back in '76, and I wish he was still in the business, but he's gone on to good stuff where he doesn't have to deal with jerks all the time. So I'm referring to publishers, not talent. Of all the people I could wish upon a newcomer to meet in a comic book store, Jack C. Harris would be at the top of that list.
So, we've kind of talked about Mad Cave, and these things happen where there is in this industry there's money put in certain places, and there's the right people who are cultivating the right stories, and you see it kind of move around from publisher to publisher, from publisher. Mad Cave is definitely in their feeling their oats right now. They have some great some great licensing that's coming out. They have a lot of great creator owned stuff. They have a lot of great in-house stuff. What's your experience? And like, we tend to have people on the show. We had Mike Martz a couple of weeks ago, which was great. I wanted to have Mike on, and we talked about lots of stuff, but he's excited about what's going on here. So what's your experience with Mad Cave?
Oh, they're killing it. Sorry, man. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Please
No,
bite the hand that feeds you.
The team's been killing it. It's been an incredible experience. Like I said, weird to go through the comic making process between two publishers, but so very different experiences. But yeah, like Mad Cave, killing it, loving it.
Yeah, it's been like, this is the second title for me working with them, and when this is just a bit of like history for us. When we signed the deal for Wardens, we actually signed the deal for Wardens and Eden Frost at the same time.
Okay.
Both of these are things that we've pitched to them. We actually pitched to them Wardens before I pitched Eden Frost. We just ended up getting both contracts at the same time. It was just based on kind of like Mad Cave's corporate journey in the end of the day and the timing kind of working out. But it's been a really fantastic experience beginning to end. And I think, part of it is they just have a very good staff, both senior and junior. As somebody who has built and sold companies before, I also noticed something that I think is extremely obvious, but also not common enough. And they're doing it very well, where they have this like very good structure, first of all, like an actual structure and a hierarchy that works very well. But they have a team of very senior people who are specialists in what they do, essentially managing and cultivating talent of younger and up-and-coming talent, essentially. So they have very strong junior staff, very strong, like the chiefs of the company. So you have the seniors doing their job, right? The senior staff is training the younger staff and empowering them. That is rare, right? It shouldn't be, but that is rare, and they're doing it very, very well. So it's a really good mix of demographics and ages, and a team that feels empowered to do what they're doing. And I think it comes out in their output and in the pace and in the marketing and really everything that they do. So it's been a real delight to work with them because A, they're very reliable, B, they are very creator friendly, and C, they're kind of up for anything. Like me and Elliot are very like proactive in trying to push a lot of our own initiatives and a lot of our own essentially like business development around what can we do with a title, because we're very like medium agnostic, right? Like we come from animation, we come from comics, produced video games before. Like we love all these mediums, and whenever we watch or develop anything, that's why we still use the word like property. When we develop something, inherently, neither of us believes that something can only exist in one medium. I think that is a very narrow way of thinking. But adaptation to other mediums is also not obvious. You have to do it right. You have to think about how you would do it in order to leverage whatever the medium offers you. So you have to treat the medium and its audience with respect. It's like the foundation of product design. So I can tell right now, this is like early on, so we're not going to announce anything yet. But even for Last Warden, there is already an adaptation that we're negotiating right now to turning it into an audio drama, which is really, really exciting. And you can think of what you can do with that medium with a horror property, right? But it's also like, it's not a direct translation if you do something like that, because you're going, well, now you're essentially writing a novella based on it. So how are you going to do it? Well, one of the things we're already talking about is like, well, if we do it, then we're going to have it be from Danielle's first-person perspective. As people who already read the first issue, you can already tell, wait, but some scenes won't actually translate. So you have to think about different problem-solving solutions in order to kind of like take the best out of the medium, apply it to how you're going to tell the story within the medium, and then make it both standalone and complementary, so that people who consume both feel like they got something extra out of the experience. So that's something that we're always keeping in mind where we're developing everything, and it's also true here.
I'm a big fan of audiobooks, and particularly full cast audio. I just love them. I have a pretty serious broadcasting background and stuff. So, and I have a big ego, so it fits. But the thing as a storyteller that I like the most about audio is that you, meaning the creator or performer, has the best brush in your hand possible. That brush is the listener's mind.
Yeah.
And you're writing for what the listener paints in his or her brain pan.
Yeah.
And that is a luxury you have to stop to appreciate, to enjoy, for comics people, for multimedia people, and you guys are animators and have done all, games and all this stuff, and that's great. It's easier to understand, but every medium is different, and the best part about it is everyone has its unique advantages.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's the exciting thing about it, right? That's the exciting thing about adapting anything. It's understanding the medium itself and what it actually gives you, and how do you leverage it to create something that feels familiar, is still true to whatever the creation is, but it does something different that the other medium couldn't. and now it feels like its own thing. Like there's an advantage for you to consume it in that form. So one of the things we are planning is like, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to make sure that there are certain details that become clearer when you consume it in one medium and not on the other, simply because of the nature of the medium itself. And I'm not going to reveal too much about what that is.
Yeah.
But it's things like that that makes it that make that process really interesting.
Right.
You know, I truly enjoy having these conversations with you because, you know, you think about storytelling in multiple facets that I find interesting. One is the telling, like we spent a lot of time tonight talking about the guts of causing emotion in your reader, and there's that element to telling a story. But there are other things that are part of this industry that are economic related, and you have an eye for that as well. And to find someone who can see both sides of that is not as common as you would think. And I appreciate that. And that's why I love having these conversations.
Thank you.
When we're gonna get Last Wardens in July. Can you tell us? I know it hasn't been announced yet, but do we have a date on when the next book is going to be? Do we know? Is it going to be this year, next year?
Yes. Oh, you mean like the next issue?
The next story that you guys are doing.
Oh.
They said there's multiple things. Is it going to be 2024? We can get something later this year.
You've said that a lot lately, actually. I followed up it online. So
we don't know.
Okay.
Comic book deals is like you
Sure.
sign for an arc, then you see how it goes, then you'll see. But that's also why we're also examining other verticals to say, like, you know what? You never know what audience you're going to grab. If it's going to continue as a comic, amazing. Then we're going to continue it as a comic. If it's going to continue as an audiobook, as a novella, like that's what I mean. Like these things can live in so many forms. As far as the comic goes, we're hoping it's well received and that we get to continue. If not, then it's going to be a really good self-contained story. If we get to continue, we'll find out after it comes out.
yeah, but 30 years from now, people are going to love it. You know? They're going to think it's the greatest thing ever published. You know? We invented staples for this book. Come on.
I'd like for you guys to take a second and just think about, like, I'd like to talk about what your experience is when something that you've created, you know, becomes available to the public and you get a reaction from the public. You know, both of you, I kind of like, and I know that, you know, Elliot, this is your first comic, but like you have experience in animation and, you know, things you worked on. And when someone actually sees that thing that you've been working on and experiences it, how's that react to you?
Oh, that's such an easy. My heart glows.
Yeah.
All the years on Bob's Burgers, for example, seeing like I worked on that. I did this scene. Oh my god, it's fantastic. It's the best feeling ever. Now, granted, when it comes to comics specifically, I don't know because The Last Wardens isn't out quite yet. But
Right.
I will say that we managed to get some really fun pull quotes. So the sneak peek issues that we sent out and having people read that and be like, "Oh, this is really fun." You know, yourselves included. Like that's really that means a lot to us. It's why we do it, I guess. I mean, that's why I do it. I can't speak for Amit here. But
I don't want to speak for Bob because he's perfectly capable of speaking for himself. But the impression, the thing I like most about these SquadCasts is, I mean, we talk to old friends and stuff, and I love that. But we talk with younger, newer creators and kind of showcase stuff. We could do this every day, and there wouldn't be enough to cover everything that we think is cool. But it is so exciting to see people come into the medium and make their mark and develop and become better and become great, and then, you know, fall down into the gutter and just have a miserable time. But, you know, and then get back up on your feet. You know, it's show business. Comics is show business. And I admire you guys. I admire everybody who pulls it off. And I admire you guys for doing it well.
thank you.
I agree. And I, you don't have to speak for me, but I I do. I agree. I like the opportunity that we have of showcasing people who are excited about the medium, excited about what they're doing, and being able to talk about it. But to go back to my question, if I can for a second, I mean, when Eden Frost came out at a time that you didn't expect for it to come out, like the world changed before Eden Frost hit the world.
Yeah, talk about
How when it hit, and what was the reaction that you got? What was that like to experience that?
You mean for me specifically?
For you specifically,
when it came out, or
well, when you got a reaction from people who had read it?
I think one of the things that I was really happy about that I there are the things that you can't really expect. I think it goes back into what we were discussing earlier. The fear is always that people are going to make it political, not in the right way, like where they make it about contemporary events and where we are. Like that was a fear of mine, that I'm like, oh, you're going to miss the point completely if you're going to try and just tie it to whatever you're seeing on TV right now and wherever you stand on the political spectrum. I was actually really relieved and gratified that has never happened, and that people who did read it and reviewed it were able to actually just see it for what it is. And I am never going to take that for granted. To me, that was almost like a surprise, a pleasant surprise, where I'm like, oh my God, yeah, people just took it for what it is. And took away from it things that I didn't expect. I think one of the, with Eden Frost, I took a lot of leaps of faith that, once again, like, kudos to Mad Cave and to James specifically. I had to multiple times, like, tell him, like, hey, man, you're going to have to trust me on this. Let me do this, right? Like, a lot of little choices that, because, like, if you've read Eden Frost, you know that I specifically try to not explain a lot. Right? I don't explain about when we are. I let people figure that out from conversations that are a lot more organic in the story.
Yep.
And I think, and the same with like people's backgrounds. I wrote these like very detailed profiles because I wanted to understand each character, where they come from, all the baggage that they bring to the table. But then, if you bring baggage to a situation, it's not like you're coming into the situation and going, well, when I was a young lad, this happened to me, and this is why I'm telling you this right now, or this is why, right? Yeah. Don't think in that way. And the thing that was really gratifying is that people managed to pick up on a lot of those nuances without having to be told, and then mention it, whether it's through reviews, whether talking about it to me directly, or writing about it on social media. That part is extremely satisfying because it's very validating. It tells you, like, I'm so glad that I took this leap, that I had just enough confidence to say, fuck it, yeah, I'm going to believe that this is going to work, because you never really know. You make an assumption.
That's right.
Elliot knows this from working with me. Like, it's the old like Star Trek episode when I'm gonna get real fucking nerdy right now.
Let's do it.
The Star Trek episode when Picard and Crusher essentially like share this mental link, and they can hear each other's thoughts, right? And there's a moment where Crusher asks Picard something, and he just very confidently says, like, yes, we should do this. And she gets really pissed off because she can actually read his mind and go, like, you're just guessing right now. Like, why are you saying this confidently? You're lying to me. And him trying to explain, like, this is what I think is, our best chance of survival, but I have to essentially give you this confidence as a leader so that because if we stay here, we might just die. Like, this is our best chance. So I have to take this leap, and this is something that Elliot knows because he's been working with me for a while. I do this, right? So when I make a decision, or when I push something, or when I try to push us somewhere, I always come with, like, this is not coming out of nowhere. It's just it's not me just winging it. And same with Eden Frost. I'm not going to make this choice arbitrarily without thinking of the consequences or without actually measuring. But you're still taking.
But at some point, you have to step.
You have to do it. You just have to do it and not give in to the fear and say, you know what? All right, let's just go. See, and I think that's a very satisfying thing for me. Seeing when these gambles pay off. That is, to me, the most satisfying thing. And sometimes it's little things, right? Like, but that That is the killer.
You know what though, man? It works. If it works, it works.
That's right.
If it works, it works.
That's right. And that's the part of life that people have to accept. You can feel great about it when it works, and you can feel dumbfounded that it did. And you got to get through that part. But hey, it worked. Take the win.
Yes. Yeah.
Take the win.
Yeah.
Do something with it, maybe, but take the win.
Yeah.
Elliot, you live in Sheboygan now?
No, I'm in Burbank.
Okay.
I'm just back to visit my family. But I will never say no to a trip to Sheboygan, though, because it's the best, as we've established. It doesn't have like an S in front of it, like some other kind of Sheboygan. So.
Listen, you realize why you realize why that is, right?
Why?
It's because it's French, because it was translated from French. In French, that's why Chicago is a sh. The ch is a sh. It's because in French the ch is sh.
So we're elegant, is what you're saying.
And the Potawatomi Indians who named Chicago were all French.
Royale with cheese. Here's like
exactly.
there you go.
It's all the same thing with Michigan, right? Because Michigan, the ch is there in the middle of.
Check William Messner Loeb's series Journey, which is about 40 years old. I know Fantagraphics put it out in trade. Somebody else should tomorrow. It's brilliant, but it's all about those.
Did he draw that?
In that.
Did he draw that? Did Bill
Yeah,
draw that?
Yeah, it was his first big project.
And then you hired him.
Oh yeah, I ain't stupid. This stuff is good. I want that. You bet. Okay, being an editor sometimes is like being a kid in a candy store, but with, a quarter. You're not having enough money to do anything with it because, comic books.
People want to get paid, right?
People want to pay their rent. They don't even
like
want
that
to
direct
pay
deposit
so much as be able to just not have to live on the street.
Okay.
They're like a kid in a candy store, but you can't binge. You're basically a kid in a candy store with diabetes.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to say that. I'm type 1 diabetic. There you go.
Yeah, well, I'm type 2.
My second contribution.
I actually am the opposite. I have very low blood sugar. Which is why when we do conventions, the Harrisons take care of me. They feed me.
We need to make sure he eats and I don't. That's that works. He needs enough sugar and I need to make sure I don't have too much.
You can miss a meal. Well,
all right, guys. We are super excited about this book again.
Thank you so
much. People who are watching, people who've come in late. The last Wardens from Mad Cave Studios available July 17th. It is an entertaining ride. I was thoroughly engrossed and captivated, and then I didn't know what happened, and I can't wait to get issue 2. So
that's high praise.
Yeah. So
we caught you off guard.
And no, and that's fine. Like it's some of the it's funny because I was reading some of the things that you've said about the book in kind of the press, and I'm like, yeah, you that's what you said, and that's what I got. It's really so which means you knew what you were doing, and that's the good part.
Yeah,
Eden Frost trade comes out
is May 22nd, which is a really good day.
Write that down in your little weekend plans, folks. If you haven't read the miniseries, pick this up. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
And again, we will have you guys back because this was a lot of fun. I hope you come back. Thanks for being here, and we'll do this again.
Thank you guys so much. Well, we have 2 more books coming out that we know of right now, so don't worry.
We're planning on still being here, so
good.
Drop by.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you both. Thank you very much. Great meeting you both.
Great. Have a good one.
All right.
All right, Mike.
That was fun.
That was fun. I'm glad we got that got to do that. That was a lot of fun. Again, everybody go read those books. They are really, really good comics. They're good comics. And that's what I love about them. They're beautiful and important, and they move your soul, which is what comics does for me. So
It also is the next step in the future of comics, American comics. We're getting further and further away from we're just wacky teenagers and superheroes.
Right.
And I like wacky teenagers and superheroes, don't get me
Sure.
wrong. But there's so much more to the medium. And so many of the people that we feature on the SquadCast are people who are producing stuff that go at least one step beyond that. And it's good. We need to expand our horizons. We need to entertain ourselves in new ways.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, in terms of where I see comics going and what I'm looking for from comics. It's definitely stuff like this that I look for right now. So
it fulfills the ambition that I had in 1973 when I first saw those French graphic novels.
Right.
Why couldn't we do this here in this country? Well, we are.
All right, Mike. Have a good week. We, folks, we are probably not going to have a show next week. We have a bunch of stuff going on in the Harrison household, but we will be back in 2 weeks. We have a guest. I'm pretty certain that it will be Adam Phillips, which will be a lot of fun because we'll talk about comics history and his place in it and whatever else we want to talk about. And we can talk more about things. And we have some guests coming up in June. June is going to be a very colorful month because we need it to be. And
we all need it. Yes.
We'll see you later, guys.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you